Jack Sully, West River's one and only Robin Hood and cattle rustler. For those of you who've read my book, West River, you'll find that Jack Sully casts a long shadow across all of the Midwest. We first encounter him as a friend of young Jacob Harmon in the late 1860s and 70s in western Nebraska, southwestern South Dakota, and Colorado, when a young Jack Sully was stealing horses from the Utes and work for that early pioneer rancher in southwest South Dakota and eastern Wyoming, E. Whitcomb. Thereafter, we find mention of Jack Sully and his partner Jack Kincaid as cowboys who trailed beef north to the Rosebud Reservation, and a news article B wherein it is described how those cowboys could trail, I heard, and across the wide Missouri with them. Before the turn of the century, we find Jack Sell and Jack Kincaid and Charles Meigs County were. Jack Sella has taken and white wife and been elected sheriff. Jack Kincaid dies, and Jack Selle marries his widow and raises Kincaid's family together with his own, and is found as a woodcutter and supplier of words for steamboats plying the Missouri River at his headquarters on an island in the river just north of the mouth of the Whetstone in Gregory County, South Dakota. From there, we traced Sully rustling enterprises up and down the Missouri River from Nebraska to Fargo to St. Paul and Canada. Since the publication of that book, West River, I have found two articles that best flesh out in more detail just what kind of a man was. These articles shed the life on his friends, travels, and his death when shot and killed in Gregory County, South Dakota. Since the articles are so explicit, I have taken the liberty of quoting directly from them, only to say that Jack Sell must have been a Robin Hood to have treated young Thomas Lyons as he did on their train ride from St. Paul to Chicago, when Thomas Lyons was 16 and a soon-to-be student at the University of Notre Dame. The second article gives a vivid account of the last ride Sully. In the light of this article, one wonders why the posses that was made up of cattlemen shot Jack Sully from ambush, firing 40 rounds when he was only 100 yards away. In researching Jack Sell and other stories of West River, I came to the conclusion that most of these men all boldly rolled a vast area from Kansas and Nebraska, Texas, north to Canada, and from Colorado to Chicago, knew each other very well. In visiting with Dick Casey, who was then president of this South Dakota State Bar, he described that unique South Dakota fact as Dakota Timothy. So it is that I have used his definition throughout this article. Here is how he and his friend Rich Gary described this historical phenomena. Dakota-tivity. Hi, John. You have a really good memory to even recall the conversation. Your email was forwarded to me from my office, as I am currently on sabbatical until July. The term is above and was actually coined by my old college roommate, Rich Gary. Then Rich and I collaborated on the definition of the theory, which is, everyone from South Dakota knows everyone else, at least collaterally. I am flattered that you are using that theory in your history. I hope you are doing well. Dick Casey. If you look long enough in Dakota, you will find a kindred thread that binds events and your story together into a related event or person, or both. Dakota-tivity foretells that nearly every early trespasser on the Sioux Nation's domain that remained to statehood would have had past associations and troubles that would portend future problems and violent events. Permit me to illustrate how Dakota today spans not only people, but events, times, places, and yes, even centuries. My Aunt Geraldine Simpson was married to John Maloney. Both lived in Madison, South Dakota, the home county of the Lyons family. John gave me a book of essays after I had given him a copy of my book, West River. The book of essays was written by one of his ancestors in the Lyons family, namely Thomas the Lyons. It was a book of essays about the Lyons family settling in northeastern Lake County, South Dakota, and Redstone, now Carthage, South Dakota. Imagine my surprise when I read about young 16-year-old Thomas D. Lyons being admitted to go to college at Notre Dame in Indiana, and his travels to get there including being put in the personal care of Jack Sully, from the train ride to Chattanooga, Paul to Chicago. It not only proves the theory of Dakota Tiffany, it also shows that Jack's cell was indeed also a Robin Hood area. But let the essay itself tell its story. After saying the home farewells at Redstone, I went with my father to the big place and hits up the Bronx to the bookboard. As I stepped into the bookboard, my father remarked that he supposed that I knew that times were hard, and handed me an envelope which was found to contain 10 $1 bills. 3 nights after that, at 10 p.m., Uncle Will came into the caboose of the stock train on the Chicago-Pewaukee and St. Paul to say goodbye. He deposited a big pasteboard box, which contained about 5 pounds of magnificent Dakota roast ham and 2 loaves of bread. The other stockmen in the caboose, making the trip to Chicago, were all acquaintances of this, and one short, wiry man with a thick gray mustache seemed to be a particular friend. This gentleman was the famed Jack Sell from For Rental, and Uncle Will placed the under his special protection. When Uncle Will shook hands saying goodbye, a piece of paper stuck to my hand and turned out to be a $10 bill. But my farewells were not quite finished. Mr. Kuhn Kotzpaukum spell that K-Bowl, TZPA, and this was presented to May on the theory that I made it to keep warm in the book which Sick Caboose Deluxe provided. As I prepared to stretch out on the book, one of the stockmen said that he never laid down for fear of crawlers. But Mr. Sully told Beta go ahead that the speaker's true reason for not lying down was an intense preoccupation with cards and whiskey. I woke up feeling fine and rested at 6 o'clock the next morning, crossing Minnesota, and at 1 o'clock in the afternoon our train stopped at the cross with scouts, and with the announcement from the conductor that we all had time to eat the famous turkey dinner at the Great Lacrosse Railroad dining room. I sat down next to Mr. Sully, and we had just barely started on the turkey cranberries and dressing when the brakeman came into the dining room swearing his ladder and shouting for all the cattle buyers to turn out at once, as orders were changed and our train was pulling out of the station. Mr. Sully's coolness did not desert him, even if I was a bit excited. He seized up 2 sections of the Sunday paper which I had bought and made 2 generous bundles of that turkey dressing and cranberries, giving me want to carry. When he got out onto the platform, our freight train was moving at a slow pace of the station yards. Mr. Sully and once advised May that the train would be moving too fast for us to board the caboose and that we must run over the tops of the cars. Then they hesitated for Mr. Sully said it's nothing at all here, and he at once unlocked his beautiful worked leather and silver belt. Climb out, walk ahead of you, hang on to my belt. I won't let go. Don't look down and look straight. Add at me, Mr. Sully was a man who spontaneously exuded confidence. Under his generalship, we reached the caboose safely and entered through the cupola. Even when running across the top train, I had involuntarily admired Mr. Sully's beautiful belt. When the United States Marshal's pussy shot Mr. Sully dad at his home near For Randall 3 months before my graduation at Notre Dame, a rifle bought one through that beautiful belt. The federal parties claimed that Jack Sell had gone into the enterprise of international cattle, rustling a violation of federal statute. Uncle Will always stoutly defended his friend's reputation and claimed the checks was the victim of a conspiracy on the part of rival cattle interests who had political pull sufficient to cause the issuance of a warrant for his arrest. We reached Chicago on Monday morning at 8 o'clock, and that afternoon I entered Notre Dame post Lonesome Boy east of the Mississippi River. Ours